Part 1. The Finding. The forests of Veridian Prime were not meant for humans. That's what the colony manual said, what the orientation officers drilled into every new arrival. The flora was photosynthetic in ways our eyes couldn't properly process. The fauna operated on sonar rather than sight, and the entire ecosystem hummed at a frequency that left human settlers with a persistent, low-grade headache for their first 6 months. I didn't care about any of that. I was a poacher. My name is Kaelen Vance, and 23 years ago, I was the lowest kind of criminal on a frontier world, a man who harvested protected Veridian wildlife for the black market back in core space. The pay was good, the risks were acceptable, and the moral questions were something I drank away on my nights off. The night I found her, I was tracking a luminescent stag beetle, a specimen that could fetch enough credits to keep me drunk and happy for a year. The Veridian moon was full, casting the forest in shades of silver and violet, and the beetle's glow was easy to follow as it wound through the bioluminescent ferns. That's when I heard the crying. At first, I thought it was an animal, a wounded hexapod, maybe, or a young scree abandoned by its mother. But the sound was too rhythmic, too human. Against every instinct that had kept me alive in this profession, I followed the sound instead of the beetle. What I found in a clearing, nestled in a bed of phosphorescent moss, was a baby. She wasn't human. I knew that immediately. Her skin had the faintest iridescent sheen, like oil on water, and her eyes, when they opened to look at me, were the deep violet of the Veridian sky at dusk. But she was baby-shaped, baby-sized, and she was crying the desperate, terrified cry of an infant who had been abandoned. Above her, the canopy of the forest was torn open. Through the gap, I could see the stars, and among them, the dying trail of something that had fallen from the sky. A pod. A ship. Something small and sleek, now crashed somewhere beyond the ridge. My first thought was profit. An alien baby? The right buyer on the black market would pay fortunes. Corporations, private collectors, maybe even scientific interests who didn't want to deal with galactic conclave regulations. I could retire. I could leave Veridian Prime forever. The baby cried again, a sound so small and desperate that it cut through the layers of cynicism and selfishness I had built around my heart. I swore, loudly and at length. Then I picked her up. She was warm, warmer than a human baby should be, and she weighed almost nothing. As soon as I held her against my chest, the crying stopped. Those violet eyes looked up at me, studying my face with an intelligence that seemed impossible for something so new. "Well," I muttered, adjusting her in my arms. "Looks like you're my problem now." Part 2. The Raising. I named her Lyra. It was the only name that came to mind, the name of a star I used to watch from the roof of my childhood home before I ran away to make every wrong choice a person could make. Raising an alien baby on a frontier world with no infrastructure, no support, and no idea what she needed to survive was, to put it mildly, a disaster. The first month, I survived on stolen milk substitutes and pure terror. She ate things I gave her, thankfully, but I had no idea if they were right for her, if she was growing properly, if the way her skin shimmered when she was happy was normal or a sign of some catastrophic illness. I stopped poaching. Couldn't risk it with her along. Instead, I took legitimate work, dangerous, underpaid work, clearing invasive species from agricultural zones. It paid barely enough to keep us in a small habitation pod on the edge of the colony, but it kept her fed. It kept her safe. She grew. Fast. Faster than a human child. By the time a human toddler was learning to walk, Lyra was running, climbing, exploring everything within reach. Her violet eyes missed nothing, and her mind absorbed information like a sponge. I taught her to read using old data slates I'd salvaged from a wreck. She taught herself advanced mathematics by the time she was 5. "Dad," She asked me one night, as we sat on the roof of our pod watching the binary sunset. Where did I come from? I'd been dreading this question for years. I told her the truth about the forest, about the crashed pod, about finding her alone and scared. I left out the part about considering selling her. Some truths are too heavy for a child to carry. She was quiet for a long time, processing. Then she said, "Do you think they're out there? My real parents?" "I don't know, little star. I hope so. But I know one thing for sure." "What's that?" I put my arm around her small shoulders. "Whoever they were, they missed out. Because you're the best thing that ever happened to me." She leaned into me, and for a moment, we were just a father and daughter watching the sunset on a backwater world. The years passed. Lyra grew into a young woman, brilliant and beautiful, with a quiet intensity that sometimes scared me. She had memories, she told me once. Not real memories, but echoes. Images of vast cities made of crystal, of voices that sang in harmony, of a mother's face she couldn't quite recall. I dismissed it as imagination, the natural curiosity of a child filling in the blanks of her origin. I was wrong. When she was 16, the dream started. She would wake screaming, her skin glowing with an inner light that lit up the entire pod. She spoke in languages I'd never heard, her voice layered with harmonics that vibrated in my bones. The colony doctor had no answers. The off-world medics I managed to bribe had even fewer. Then one morning, she was gone. A note on her bed, written in her precise hand. "Dad, they're calling me. I have to go. I'll find you again. I promise. I love you, Lyra." I searched for years. Spent every credit I had on trackers, informants, anyone who might have seen a girl with violet eyes and shimmering skin. Nothing. She had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. I returned to poaching, returned to drinking, returned to the hollow, empty existence I'd had before I found her. The only difference was the ache in my chest that never went away, the ghost of a daughter I couldn't save. Part 3. The Return. 23 years after I found her in that forest, I was an old man. The drinking had caught up with me, as it always does. My liver was failing, my hands shook, and I lived in the same habitation pod on the edge of the colony, surrounded by empty bottles and older regrets. The only thing I still owned of any value was a faded photograph of a girl with violet eyes, taken on her 10th birthday. The knock on my door came at midnight. I almost didn't answer. Visitors at midnight were never good. Usually creditors, or colony enforcement, or someone looking to settle an old grudge. But the knock came again, insistent, and something about the rhythm made my heart skip. I opened the door. She stood in the moonlight, and for a moment, I thought I was dreaming. The same violet eyes, the same delicate features, the same iridescent shimmer to her skin. But she was older now, 40 years old if she aged like a human, and she wore robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. Behind her, in the sky, I saw ships, dozens of them, hundreds, hanging in orbit like a necklace of diamonds. "Hello, Dad," she said, and her voice was the same. After 23 years, it was the same. "Lyra?" The word was a croak, forced through a throat tight with emotion. "Is it really you?" She stepped forward and took my hands. Hers were warm, just as they'd been when she was a baby. "It's me. I promised I'd find you." I pulled her inside, away from the impossible ships in the sky, away from the questions I couldn't yet process. She sat on my worn couch like a queen visiting a peasant's hut, and maybe that's exactly what this was. "Where did you go?" I asked. "What happened to you?" She smiled, and for a moment, she was my little girl again. "They found me, my people, the ones who crashed here, all those years ago. They've been searching for me since the moment I was lost, but Veridian Prime is hidden, remote. It took them 16 years to trace the signal from my pod. Your people, I repeated. Who are they? Her eyes grew distant. We are the Ethelari, an empire that spans 12 star systems, a civilization older than humanity by tens of thousands of years. My mother was their empress. When she died in the crash that brought me here, I became the heir to the throne. I sank into my chair, my failing heart struggling to keep up. You're an empress? I am. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. But that's not why I'm here, Dad. I came back because I need you. Need me? What could an empress possibly need from a broken-down old poacher? She reached into her robes and withdrew a small device, which projected a holographic image into the air between us. It showed a star map with one system highlighted in pulsing red. The Conclave, she said, the alliance of species that dominates this part of the galaxy, has learned of my return. They see the Ethelari as a threat, a rival. They've massed a fleet at the edge of my territory, and they've given me an ultimatum: surrender my throne to a puppet of their choosing, or face annihilation. I stared at the map, at the blinking lights representing ships and weapons and death. Lyra, I'm flattered you came to me, but what can I possibly do? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. She smiled again, but this time there was steel beneath it. You're the man who raised me, the man who taught me that kindness matters, that family matters, that there are things worth fighting for. The Conclave expects me to respond as an empress, with threats, with posturing, with war. But you taught me a different way. She took my shaking hands in hers. I want you to come with me, to stand beside me when I face them, to remind me who I am and who I chose to be. I looked at this woman, this stranger who is also my daughter, and I thought about the life I'd lived, the mistakes I'd made, the years I'd wasted. This was it, the moment that would define everything. When do we leave? I asked. The ending. The Conclave fleet was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Hundreds of ships, representing a dozen species, arrayed in battle formation at the edge of Ethelari space. Dreadnoughts from the reptilian Verhi, sleek hunters from the avian KRYLL, support vessels from a dozen client species. All of them pointed at my daughter's empire. Lyra's ship, the Starlight Empress, was something else entirely. It was alive, or seemed to be, grown from crystal and light, responsive to her thoughts, humming with an energy that made my old bones vibrate. We stood on the observation deck, watching the enemy fleet grow closer. Are you scared? I asked. She looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw the little girl in the forest. Terrified. But I learned from the best that being scared doesn't mean you stop. The comm channel opened. The Verhi Admiral's face appeared, scaled, cold, utterly without mercy. Empress Lyra, you have refused our ultimatum. This is your final chance to avoid extinction. Lyra stepped forward, and I saw her transform. The uncertain woman was gone, replaced by something ancient and powerful. Her skin blazed with inner light. Her voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to shake the ship. Admiral, she said, you speak of extinction as if it is a tool you possess. Let me show you what extinction truly means. She raised her hand, and the starfield outside shifted. Behind the Conclave fleet, the very fabric of space began to ripple. Ships emerged, Ethelari ships, thousands of them, appearing from nowhere as if they had always been there. But it wasn't their numbers that made the Admiral's scales pale. It was what they carried. On the view screen, I saw weapons unlike anything in Conclave records. Weapons that could unmake matter. weapons that could collapse stars, weapons that had never been used because the Athalari had chosen peace. I could destroy you, Lyra said, her voice calm. I could unmake every ship in your fleet and leave no trace that you ever existed. I could carry that war to your homeworlds, to your families, to your children. I have the power to do all of this. The Admiral was silent.
So was I.
But I won't. She lowered her hand, and the Athalari fleet held position. The light in her skin dimmed slightly. 23 years ago, a human found me in a forest. I was alone, scared, dying. He could have sold me. He could have abandoned me. Instead, he raised me. He loved me. He taught me that power is not the ability to destroy, it is the choice not to. She stepped closer to the view screen, her eyes locked on the Admiral. I offer you a choice. Withdraw your fleet, and I will forget this threat ever happened. Return to the Conclave, and tell them that the Athalari seek peace, not war. We will trade. We will share knowledge. We will be neighbors, not enemies. The Admiral's face was unreadable. And if we refuse? Lyra smiled, and it was the smile of an empress. Then I will show you what extinction truly means. But I hope, for both our sakes, that you choose wisely. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then the Admiral inclined his head, a gesture of respect, or surrender, or both. We will withdraw. I will convey your offer to the Conclave. The channel closed. The Vorhi ships began to turn, one by one, until the entire enemy fleet was retreating into the black. Lyra turned to me, and the light in her skin faded entirely. She was just my daughter again, trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline and fear. Did I do the right thing? She asked. I crossed to her and pulled her into my arms, just as I had when she was a baby in that forest. You did exactly the right thing. I'm so proud of you, little star. She held on to me, and for a moment, we weren't an Empress and a Poacher. We were just a father and daughter who had found each other against all odds. In the years that followed, the Athalari and the Conclave established a tentative peace. Trade routes opened. Knowledge flowed both ways. And I stayed at Lyra's side, an old man in a palace of light, serving as her advisor, her confidant, and most importantly, her father. Sometimes late at night, we would sit on a balcony overlooking her crystal city, and she would ask me about Veridian Prime.
About the forest.
About the night I found her. You saved my life, Dad, she said once. Not just in the forest. Every day you raised me, you saved me. You made me who I am. I looked out at the stars, at the empire my daughter ruled, at the peace she had forged from the threat of war. I didn't make you who you are, Lyra. I just gave you a place to start. The rest was all you. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we watched the stars together. She was the alien baby I found in the forest. Now she was Empress of 12 systems, and she was still and always would be my daughter. The end.